Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/AmIOverReacting for you all. As per usual, I'll be going through the post, giving you my opinion at the end, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Discombobulated ad 480. Am I overreacting? 27 female for leaving my boyfriend, 30 male, after he opened up to me. Oh boy. I've been dating this guy for a few months and we recently became official, which is a big deal for me. I've been single for a few years after my last relationship ended and have a bit of dating anxiety, so this was a big step. Things have been going well so far. He's kind, smart, seems to have his life together. He was supposed to sleep over at my place and we were having a late night pillow talk when he started opening up to me about some of the things in his past. In my group of friends, I'm seen as the mother, the therapist figure, so it's not unusual for people to open up to me. I try to exercise empathy and compassion and be that safe space for people to talk about things. I wanted to do the same here. He talked about doing cocaine and MDMA during university and having panic and anxiety from it, so he stopped. He also talked about a couple of drunken fights he got into last year. He was arrested for punching his friend at a bar, apparently they're still friends and hang out regularly, and then another drunk fight a month later where it was 5-on-2 and his friend got injured. He said he was going through a rough time in life and the incident spooked him. He says he hasn't done anything like that before or since. As someone who grew up in a physically abusive home, I had some alarm bells going off in my head, mainly because I don't like violence, but I kept quiet and let him continue talking. He talked a bit about his last relationship and went on a bit of a long vent about a fight he had with his ex on vacation, which kind of ended things. The way he talked about it made it seem like he wasn't really over it. At this point, my anxiety kicked in and I went into a flight state. I think it was information overload and my brain couldn't process everything. He noticed my change right away and immediately stopped talking. I began panicking and saying whatever feeling came to the top of my head, which was that I needed him to go and I didn't think it was going to work out. He was shocked, but also understanding, and he left. My friends are split. One friend said that I was acting too harsh and judgmentally about his past mistakes, that guys sometimes fight while drunk and it's not the end of the world, and that him opening up to me about it was a big deal, and me luring him into a false sense of safety and then shutting him down was not cool. Another friend said that if I was having alarm bells, it's for a reason, and that he was trauma dumping and that the fights were not normal behavior, and I was right to send him out the door. Was I overreacting or acting too harsh? Okay, this one's tricky, so I gotta kind of walk down the middle of the line here. As for the guy, the fact alone that he just simply took it on the nose and walked away, didn't put up a fight, understood, and just left, I think that does speak to the fact that he is trying to change as a person and understands that not everyone is going to accept him for who he was. But also, she's not required to date him. If she feels there could be a potential source of discomfort from this relationship and doesn't want to risk walking down that road and potentially reopening some old past traumas, that's her decision to make. And honestly, it sounds like the guy respected that. He may not have the full story, but he understood and he just simply took it and left. I think both friends bring up some pretty decent points. Alarm bells were going off for a reason, but at the same time, it does kind of suck for the guy. He opened up, he felt like he was safe, and he got shut down, and there's a chance he may not ever open up again in fear of not, well, being able to find someone. I definitely see both sides of this very much, but I'd be very curious to hear what your thoughts are, because this is complicated. Wednesday's child. Am I overreacting? My friend lied to me and left my dogs alone with no food while I was out of state on holiday, causing me to spend over $4,000 to get home to them and ruining my holiday. I since ended that friendship. Me and my entire family and extended family planned a trip out of state for 3 weeks, and prior to this I had arranged with my good friend to get someone in my house to house sit and watch my 2 dogs. She was a great help and organized someone to come in for the time we were gone. Or, so she told me. 1 week into our trip, I was in the middle of the desert, Australia, with barely any phone reception. I happened to check my Ring camera and noticed that no one had been to my house for 4 days. That means my dogs were left alone with no food for 4 days. I was literally distraught I messaged her immediately and she just said, "Oh, I don't know, so-and-so was supposed to go to the house." I ended up finding out that she lied about the house sitter. There was no house sitter. Ever. She had gone a few times to feed them prior to this, and that was it. She made no attempts to help further or rectify anything else. So once that conversation happened, I immediately ended up messaging my ex-boyfriend to go to my house and check on my dogs. I had no contact with him prior to this for several months, but luckily he did go and check my dogs. Since being left alone though, my dogs had decided to shit and piss all over my bed, ruining my mattress and bedding, chewed my brand new lounges, chewed my kids' wooden beds, just completely trashed my house. I finally ended up making it to our holiday destination a few days later and paid $4,000 in emergency flights back home to my dogs. The whole time leading up to my flight out, I was a wreck though. It completely ruined my holiday. I saved up for this, with my kids. I had paid so much money in travel costs, only to have it all cut short and the remaining time I had filled with anxiety and stress about my house and dogs. Note, I am a single mom, and this was far beyond anything I can financially recover from. Upon arrival, my house was full of maggots because my bins hadn't been taken out. My bedding was wrecked. The floors were covered in urine and feces. There was a dead bird in the backyard. My dogs just had free range of my house without any supervision. It was a horrific state to come home to. I have cleaned for 48 hours straight. I messaged my friend and told her that I was beyond upset and that it was probably best our friendship was done. That this completely ruined my holiday, drained my savings, and that she had let me down beyond words could even say. It was, to me, a massive betrayal. She ignored my message and left me on read. I guess she's upset with me now. My mom thinks I'm overreacting when I said I had to end that friendship and move on from it. That I could have just worked it out and been understanding. But my dogs are an important part of my family and I entrusted someone to not only care for them, but look after my house as well. I'm still a wreck. I have cried nonstop for a week. I don't think I will ever emotionally or financially recover from the week I just had. Am I overreacting to this situation? Edit, I'm trying to reply to everyone individually, but there's far too many comments, and as I'm repeating myself a lot, this post was asking if I was overreacting to ending the friendship. The details were there as a backstory, some relevant info, maybe some irrelevant info too, I guess, but I just wrote what I wrote. I genuinely started to question if I was overreacting, acting out emotionally after my mother said those words to me. My mom told me I should have just kept the peace. The first and foremost important thing is that my dogs are okay. I flew home to them to ensure this, but yes, I am upset about the money spent and my damaged property. I'm only human and an autistic one at that. I have trouble regulating my emotions. This was a lesson I have paid for greatly, not just financially, but emotionally as well. I'm consumed with guilt about my actions, anxiety that my dogs could have died. There is a lot of sadness and anger and guilt regarding all of it. 1. I did empty my bins and clean my house for said house/dog sitter. As I left, I placed a single can of dog food in the bin, which attracted flies. I was under assumption someone would be house sitting, so would take out the bins. 2. I have read all comments, and as harsh as some of them are, I agree, I'm an idiot. I acknowledge and accept my role in this and not taking it solely upon myself to organize, vet, and pay for proper dog care. Leaving my dogs in the hands of someone else without proper info was a mistake and poor judgment on my part. In my last text message to her, I acknowledged this and apologized for leaving them with her when they were my responsibility. 3. There is barely any phone service or reception where I was traveling. I was traveling across the country in a car, camping along roads and roundhouses in the desert. I was checking my dogs every chance I got. It was between phone service that I left them not checked. Then, once I checked on them, I messaged my friend about it immediately and planned other interventions with my ex. 4. I don't think my friend had any ill intentions, to be honest. I do think she lied about a house sitter, but in my humble opinion, I truly believe she just thought she could handle it as she promised me and couldn't. And then it got to the point my dogs were left alone for several days. My gripe is that I don't think she thought I'd check the cameras, and if I hadn't checked them, I think my dogs would have been left longer and possibly died. I think it all got beyond her control. I don't really have an answer from her. I didn't explicitly ask her for help initially or force onto her care of my dogs. She offered to help me, and I accepted her help because she knew people, and I blindly and naively trusted her as a friend. 6. I traveled out of state, not out of country. 7. I have no further contact with this friend, and I did block her yesterday as I didn't think I wanted to hear any replies or excuses anyway. Regardless of all actions by everyone, including myself, my dog still got left alone for several days, and she knew they were alone and didn't tell me or care, and I don't think she had any intentions of telling me had I not found out by myself. I think while OP does have a little bit of blame, it's not nearly as much as they've been led to believe, because they were told by a friend, someone they trusted, that they had it, they could handle it, that this was something they could do. And they couldn't. And OP's concerns about the fact that her dogs were just left alone for days on end, with no message from the friend, and the friend thought they could have probably gotten away with it, and the dogs not just were left alone with no food and pissing and shitting everywhere, they were also tearing furniture apart. Like, there is so much damage done here because of the friend's inaction. I don't think OP's overreacting, because if they did not check the cameras, they would have come back to a destroyed house and dead dogs. And considering the fact there were already flies, that could have been horrible. Darian Danson. Am I overreacting? I took my kids costume shopping. My ex exchanged their costumes for less expensive ones and kept the difference. I, 40 male, took my daughters, 7 and almost 6, costume shopping. I brought my ex, 41 female, because I wanted her to be included in the decision making, and I'm not great at sizes off the top of my head. My oldest chose a boy-style costume, and my youngest picked a cheerleader costume, and my ex was apprehensive about the costume not being warm enough, and I suggested pants under the skirt to keep her warm. Ex agreed and checked the sizes in the costumes. The girls helped pick my costume, and we went to pay. All in all, it set me back around 170 Canadian dollars. X paid for her own slutty ninja costume. A couple days later, X messages me and says, the boy costume's pants go up to my oldest's armpits, and she's uncomfortable with my youngest as a cheerleader. I was frustrated because she specifically said the sizes were fine and didn't make any fuss about the cheerleader, just the warmth. I offered to help her take them back for exchange, and she said she'd handle it. Whatever, no skin off my teeth. I get a message from her saying that she got them new costumes. When I asked what they are, she said that the girls didn't want her to tell me. I got a little frustrated, but grit my teeth and moved on. I asked if there was a price difference, and she dodged it, asking, why do I need to know? I pointed out that it was my money for the costume, and even tried going the higher road and asked if it cost more and offered to pay her back. She said we're good. I asked, so it was a straight exchange. She asked if it matters. I said straight out, did they give you any of my money, yes or no? She ignored me for an entire day. Am I overreacting to be pissed for her getting my kids cheaper costumes, pocketing the difference, and not telling me what they chose? Update, I grit my teeth and asked the important question. Do they like their costumes? Whatever they are. She said yes, so I let it go, thinking as long as the girls are happy, I shouldn't make a huge deal. The next time I saw the girls, I asked their costumes and they told me. Oldest one got the same costume, but girl style, with a long skirt. And youngest got an animal. But am I wrong being pissed at her? So while there is no confirmation the costumes are indeed cheaper, I think it's a pretty fair assumption to make that, yeah, the costumes are cheaper. I'm also curious how much gaslighting was involved to make the kids switch their costumes. No, you don't want to be a cheerleader, right? You would much rather be this, right? Like, look how cool this is. Isn't this a much better costume? You know, that kind of like child gaslighting. Because I mean, the costumes were purchased with the ex-wife deliberately under the supervision of, hey, can you make sure these fit them? Then suddenly they don't fit them. Now they're being exchanged, and she won't say if whether or not the costumes exchanged for had a price difference that she pocketed. I would say not overreacting the slightest, possibly maybe slightly underreacting, because there is the fact that the girls picked out your costumes and you picked out the costumes of the girls. The ex-wife picked out her own costume entirely isolated, and then she brought them back and they picked out new costumes that you had no part in when they had a hand in picking out your costume. I don't know. I think I would feel kind of hurt by this whole scenario, and it would definitely suck. And that's like not even including the monetary aspect of it. I'd just be hurt by those actions just in general. Like, money is one thing, but there's the fact that she kind of just took the whole experience of Halloween costume shopping as a family away. But if I were to give recommendations as being a child from a divorced family when I was 4, don't sweat it. Because while it does suck now, as your kids grow, they will see this shit, they will remember it, and as they get older, they'll realize all the times their mom pulled shit like this, and it'll make your bond with the kids stronger, but you have about another 10 years or so until that begins to happen, unfortunately. Assuming your ex-wife doesn't drop the ball any further and begin to cause resentment in other areas. ZZ Mango Street. Am I overreacting about my partner's behavior at the hospital? A year ago, I fell from a high height. I didn't hit my head, but the force of the fall caused neck and brain injuries. I originally went to urgent care, but after I told them the distance, they urged me to go to the ER because the potential of massive trauma was very high. My spouse of 8 years and I went to the ER with our preschooler. In the ER room, multiple staff members came toward me quickly, putting me in a neck brace, touching different areas of my body, saying, "Can you feel this? Can you feel that?" They thought I had broken my neck or that I had an aneurysm from the force of the fall. It was extremely traumatizing. They told me I needed a CT scan with contrast to make sure my neck or blood vessels weren't broken. As we waited for them to get me for the scan, I was crying. Our kiddo was on me, asking, "Mommy, what's wrong?" And my partner was on TikTok. This was so hurtful for me, so I asked him, "Do you need to be on your phone right now?" He got angry at me, saying if it were him, he wouldn't get mad at me over this, and what's the point of worrying if we don't know if anything's wrong? He also said all he could think about was how hungry he is, because he had skipped breakfast, even though I made some. He had me DoorDash burgers to the hospital. I will say though, he had probably gone 3 days without his antidepressants. It's been a year, but I can't forgive him. I have lingering cognitive effects, including POTS and daily neck pain. Almost all sex has ceased, which he is very resentful for. He says if it had been him, he wouldn't have minded. I told him that if it were him, I would have never behaved in such a way. I just can't forget him laughing at TikTok while I cried in a neck brace, wondering if I had an aneurysm that I could drop from at any time. That's how my grandmother died, which he knows about. I can't forget him yelling at me that he was so hungry, he couldn't think about anything else. I just can't help but ask myself, is that how a husband should behave when their wife is potentially critically injured? Am I overreacting? I feel like the relationship was over in that moment. Why would I ever let into my body someone who had so little regard for me? Edit to add, 1, I need to address a mistake I made. After some people asked if I was using my phone with a neck brace on, it made me realize that he was the one to order DoorDash. Sorry about that. I had a fresh brain injury, but he did yell at me to tell me that all he could think about was that he had skipped breakfast. My kiddo was lying on me watching TV because they were worried about me. Second, I don't need to go into the details of my accident, whether some of you believe the severity or not. He knew the severity. But also, he and I split up a week ago. Though he is still here while looking for their housing, I ended up with him after many unhappy years after realizing we have different values in life. Values different enough that we can't both have the things we want in life. Saying everything out loud, ending it, finally brought up the pain that I had been pushing down for so long. This wasn't a question of whether I should leave him. I was more wanting to see if my own hurt over previous incidents was clouding my judgment. Thank you all for your opinions and kind words. Everyone will be happier in the long run, though it hurts so bad right now. So I might need people who have actually been on antidepressants to double check this, but this doesn't quite line up with not being on antidepressants, of complaining about hunger and just not giving a shit about your partner. Now, I've been on anti-anxiety medication, and yeah, some of them will cause that, Zoloft being one of them. I used to be on that, and I stopped taking it because the problem with that medication specifically for me is that it stops making me care about everything. That's how it handles your anxiety. You no longer care about work, you no longer care about school, you don't care about passion projects, you just exist in the moment. But again, that's being on the medication. If he was on medication like that, I could maybe piece a couple things together and understand things, but he would need to be apologetic afterward, which he was not. But in this situation, he was off of his antidepressants, so I'm not sure. That's kind of why I'm asking the general question of, is this normal behavior for not being on your antidepressants? a genuine question, because to me, doesn't seem to be so. Doesn't line up in my head, and the side effects listed for antidepressant withdrawal, from what I'm seeing, don't line up with this behavior. The only reason why I'm digging into that, because it felt like OP was trying to justify this individual's actions to make it seem more understandable, and that's kind of why I hyper-fixated on it, is because I noticed that. I noticed they're trying to find excuses for their partner to try and make it so that way their emotions have less value. I used to do this shit all the time. You get a lot of negative thoughts and doubts about a relationship or about a current circumstance, but you sweep it under the rug, you put a smile on, and you act like everything's fine, and you find little ways to justify their behavior, so the rug looks just a little bit less lumpy. It's good that she got out of this relationship, because while this is a very minor thing, this is a sign of more behaviors to come, and it sounds like that was the case. They just had different values in life and they ended up splitting, and this was something that, as OP stated, they were worried it was clouding their judgment. And yeah, it probably was, but rightfully so. Cute madness, babe. Am I overreacting? Caught my boyfriend 30 male on Tinder while I was with my mom at her dialysis appointment. What now? Hey everyone, I, 29 female, have been dating my boyfriend, 30 male, for about a year and a half, and things seemed great between us, or so I thought. Yesterday, I took my mom to our dialysis center, and while waiting, I was scrolling through my phone when I got a message from a friend. She sent me a screenshot of my boyfriend's Tinder profile. I didn't want to believe it, so I opened the app myself to see if he was really on there, and sure enough, there he was, active and everything. My heart dropped. It felt so disrespectful, especially while I was supporting my mom through something so serious and difficult. I haven't confronted him yet because I don't want to act out of anger or hurt, but I keep going back and forth between wanting to get the full story and just feeling so betrayed. He's always told me he's happy with me and committed, so seeing him on Tinder is totally unexpected. For anyone who's been through something similar, how did you approach the situation? Am I overreacting, or is this just plain disrespectful? See, I kind of had a bit of a reverse scenario of this, where I had my partner at the time claimed to be visiting a family who was going through some severe medical treatments, and I later found out they were using that as a cover to go see someone else. So the entire time they were telling me that they were in quarantine and they were with their family member who was immunocompromised, so they had to be careful with what they were doing. Turns out they were at an Airbnb with someone else and moving on. Now, back to OP's post, it would be one thing if there was a dead and inactive Tinder account that just happened and never been closed. But for there being an active Tinder account, which I have no idea how to check that because I've never used Tinder, so I don't know what that would look like, but I assume there's probably ways to tell that someone's active, whether it's new photos being posted or I don't know. But if it's active, then you're most certainly not overreacting in the slightest. Like, I don't think Tinder has any social media functionality that would make it worth keeping around after you find a match. I don't really know much about the app, but if that exists, let me know. Harry Mason 02. Am I overreacting? My mother-in-law took a special moment at my daughter's school. So, my 4-year-old daughter is in kindergarten, and her school recently celebrated Mail Day. The teachers asked parents to handwrite a letter to be read in front of the class, which I thought was such a cool idea. Naturally, I was excited to co-write something heartfelt for my daughter. However, when we went to drop off the letter in the special mailbox the school had set up, we found out that my mother-in-law had already written and submitted her own letter. That was the one the school read in front of the class, not ours. I didn't even know she was planning to write one, let alone submit it before we had the chance to. I'm feeling really upset because this was supposed to be a personal moment between our daughter and us, and it feels like my mother-in-law overstepped. My wife thinks it's not a big deal and that I should let it go, but I can't help feeling like something was taken from me. Am I overreacting? So the grandmother had to find out about this somehow, and apparently, according to OP's comments, it was briefly mentioned in a phone call between his wife and his mother-in-law. And that means the grandmother heard this and just jumped at the opportunity to take this. I would say they definitely overstepped boundaries, because it would be something else if the grandmother heard that and said, "Oh, I would love to take this opportunity to write this letter to my granddaughter. Would I be allowed to do this instead?" That would be a very different conversation, but instead it does feel like she went behind your back and submitted the letter beforehand so that way you couldn't. The grandmother certainly realized this was a special enough opportunity to go through the hassle of doing this, and you also realized this was a special opportunity, and it was, in fact, taken from you. I would say take note of this behavior, let the mother-in-law know that she overstepped in the situation, and probably do something nice for your daughter. I'm trying to think of how I would navigate a situation like this without burning too many bridges, and I honestly think that this is probably one of the least destructive ways to go that doesn't cause any problems in the future. But if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments, because drawing a line now will definitely help prevent things in the future, and you can point to that line being drawn, and it would also be good to do something for your daughter, because my guess would be is that as a father, you probably wanted to help build that relationship up with your daughter, and you saw this as an opportunity, and that was taken from you. I don't think you're overreacting. I think that you were looking forward to something to help build your bond with your daughter, and that was taken from you. And I think that you have every right to be upset about that and make sure that it's known that you're upset by this. I think that's okay. Les Twist 4094. Am I overreacting for catching my wife lying about a trip she went on? My wife recently turned 50. For what it's worth, she's very beautiful, youthful, and can easily pass for late 30s. Warm and friendly and super attractive. She loves to travel to Florida, and her best friend has a condo there, and they go down a few times a year. She let me know a few weeks ago that 4 of her friends had surprised her with a birthday cruise to the Caribbean. She went on the cruise and was texting me and keeping in touch, keeping me updated on her travel and then on her activities on the cruise, sending pics and videos, etc. But something seemed off. It was always pics of things and never people. I inquired if everyone was having a good time, and she said yes. She said that one of them couldn't make it and it was the 4 of them. She mentioned something about the 2 girls that she was not rooming with didn't get the dining package, so they weren't seeing them as much. Again, something seemed off. When she got home, she talked all about her trip, and anytime I brought them up, she kinda just moved past it. So the next day, I asked which of her friends went on the trip again, and then she got snippy about it. So I confronted her. I knew she had at least gone with her bestie because I saw her in a video. I told her I didn't think she went with her friends, and she blew up on me and got super defensive. I pointed out that there were never any pictures of them sent, posted on Facebook, and if they'd been there, she'd have a pic in her phone. She doubled down. I said, then show me a recent text message from either of them. Long story short, I went off with similar obvious points that should not refute until she admitted she'd gone with her bestie only, went through her phone, and then pics were only of them. Her only reason given was that they were all gonna go, but canceled, and she didn't tell me because she thought I'd be a jerk about it. Needless to say, I'm not happy at all about this. It's still an open wound. I am gonna leave this one to you guys in the comments, because I definitely have a lot of red flags in here, but at the same time, we don't have the full story. Because as a guy, the suspicions are to jump towards, okay, she's doing some shady shit in the relationship. But at the same time, if it is true that she feels like that the husband would have mocked her because 2 of her friends bailed on the cruise, it's another question that's worth posing. I also don't know anything about cruises. I've never been on one, I have no interest to go on one, so I don't know what kind of rules there are when it comes to room reservations or anything along those lines. But this could actually be a good thought exercise, because a guy's first reaction is going to be, she's doing something shady in the relationship. Why else would she lie this adamantly about the circumstance of events? Especially when a common first reaction would probably be, okay, well, this is a very minor thing to happen, so why are you being so secretive and dismissive of any questions being asked about the trip? But if it's true that she was nervous about telling her husband the fact that 2 friends canceled and there would be insults thrown or, heckling occurring, and that's the true honest reason why she was being so secretive about it, then that would be something that would be interesting to explore on both sides of the conversation, because guys are going to jump to one conclusion and there could be more things at foot that are worth actually discussing, and rather than pointing fingers in X, Y, and Z, I think understanding why both sides could jump to the reactions and reasons they have could be worth exploring and looking at. So have fun in the comments. Please keep it civil. Don't forget, this is brought to you by GamerSupps. Use code OZ at checkout. It's basically a caffeine powder that you put in your water, and I actually really like it. I use this on a daily basis. Don't forget that every purchase you make using code EYES directly supports the channel. And if you want a personal recommendation from me, I would either recommend the Soda Pressing Pear or Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are currently my favorite flavors. And as a note, once we sell a certain amount of stuff, I get my own flavor and my own cup, and you all know I'm gonna choose some degenerate shit that's gonna make their PR team squirm. My goal is to make them regret partnering with me. So please, use code EYES at checkout to make my dream come true of making a PR team squirm.